It's not named
Danish.
cinnamon.
Yeah.
No.
You really ought to stop eating cats.
No.
If that's, I take back my support of that prior statement. So
My cat's name is Besse, which is a pastry.
So his name is Danish.
Yes, as we established years and years ago.
It's a Danish in your parlance, yes.
And he has to live every day of his life feeling unsafe because he's literally named for emergency rations.
at least his cat wasn't named Nina or something like that, So
The best
What about
meat
Pinta or
pies
Santa
in all
Maria?
of Denmark.
Today we're talking about episode 1 to 14 of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Stick around to the end and you'll hear more about how you can support us on Patreon.
Maybe.
Good sale.
Okay.
Say now people know when to tune out. Thanks.
Exactly.
I like it. It's bookended. I'm pretty sure that was some of the advice we got. So
The advice that we got from Jerry and then ignored?
No, I'm trying to
that's
do
on
it.
us.
He
Yeah.
gave me. He said it was good. He said it was good. Okay.
Yeah, when you gave him the script that you've now lost
he said
7 times over.
He said it was good once, and we will now never change our formula again.
No, I'm sure
Well, yeah.
that's
What has he got? He's got one bit of praise from a guy who does it semi-professionally or professionally, and then he's got all of you assholes that are naysayers anyway. So like
not great for my confidence,
right. Of course he's gonna
I just
latch
wanna
on
know,
to
You know
where's
what?
that
Go to the
programming thing that
supermarket
he
when
was
you're
gonna
done.
about like grabbing the stuff from YouTube that would make my life easier, and it still doesn't exist, huh?
Are we still beating?
Okay. On Monday, I actually went to like a little conference thing here where there was 2 presentations. The first one was literally pulling audio out of video files and stuff. Like he talked about that, and the second one was distributing data and how to cache it, which might not make sense to you, but that's actually also relevant for what I have to make. So
Where's my tool?
it will
He's right there.
I have to learn a lot of things, okay? It will take a long time, but I'll make it. I'm trying. Justin
was
gave you
the-
a temporary tool. Have you used it lately?
Where was the conference
Oh,
on
she
managing
uses
your
it all the
checklist?
time. Yeah. See, what Justin did is he found 2 rocks and he smashed them together and then taped them and glued them and said, "Here, this is a tool," just like the caveman days. So I got to tell you, I got 0% consideration for caching and data management out of that. So
Andreas is bogged
It's
down
because-
in European rules and regulations. He can't do things as quickly as the rest of us.
Because,
Right.
so a quick peek behind the curtain. The thing is,
Quick.
if we take the audio out, right, and we have to put it out, and most of our audience are either you're like Europe-ish based, and another is Western American based, and other things too, sure. But so we need to have that audio file in both places, and there are ways to do that. So that's what that was. That presentation.
I believe the way to do that is called like iTunes, isn't it? So we
No,
just
they don't-
give them
they
the
don't
file
ho-
and they deal
they-
with it.
They don't host it for you.
So
Sadly.
they're just redirecting to our.
They are redirecting to an RSS feed, and that RSS feed says where the file is once it's been
And-
approved. Like once your
and-
podcast feed's been approved.
What's our stupid website?
Squarespace.
Right now, it's on
Yeah.
Squarespace.
Sorry, Squarespace. You're great and fantastic. And if you want to give us a discount on hosting, we'll say that like 2 more times. But
Yeah.
So Squarespace
sure
is
they're
hosting
listening.
it. So either way, shouldn't Squarespace be? Go back
Right
to my
now,
original.
I think we actually only have it hosted in the US. We don't have it distributed. And the
We
problem
had
is
fans in Japan once upon a time, right? Hey, if you're in Japan right now listening to this, let us know how that's going.
it's mostly fine if they download, right? The problem is if they try to stream. But yeah, I'm looking at things. I'm working on things.
Could you imagine
Something
trying to watch us live? That would be a complete waste of time.
They'd probably go to YouTube, which once again, I gotta imagine is doing some kind of caching and regional distribution.
Oh yeah,
So-
yeah, for sure. That's a black box. I don't know what's going on in there, but I know things are going on in there.
Nobody does. And it makes it harder because YouTube will just change their API because they wanna, was kind of the impression I got from
Because
some of
fuck
the
you,
things.
that's why.
Yeah. Well, like, we're YouTube. What you gonna do? So,
Co-host videos somewhere else.
right. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, to be fair, what you get for free from YouTube is kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of outrageous.
It's not free. You're the product. Go watch all those, minute and a half ads and tell
Yes.
me. So,
I don't. I use ad blocker. Screw you,
Yeah,
YouTube.
there-
I use
And
YouTube
everyone
because
else.
I'm a moral person.
No, you're not. You're an
I
idiot.
heard sucker. Did anybody else hear
Yeah,
sucker?
really.
So,
I heard something a lot
but
less nice
YouTube,
than sucker.
seriously, if you want us to promote this on the show, we'll do it like 3 times. So,
What are we talking about today?
we got to look.
An
man,
anime.
We got about
Didn't I watch an anime
Five-
for this?
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
get
You did homework.
5
You watched a thing.
minutes until the trauma comes through. So, So let's go. Let's do
So we have 14 episodes to cover in an hour. Can we do that?
Sure. 54 minutes. Hello. Really,
Sure.
50 minutes. And
I was going to say we can
Like
skip the first
Gretchen.
episode because it's nothing happens.
Yeah, nothing
First
important
episode's
happens in this
so much that
episode.
they highlight.
There's so much
Foreshadow.
great stuff in that first episode.
Nah.
Despite it being perfect,
He doesn't
full
know.
filler, 100% filler, it's like,
It's not.
okay, well, I used to talk about it last time,
Filler
though,
at
all the foreshadowing, which is for
Right.
stuff that hasn't been revealed in the first 14, except to Mace Hughes, and that's why he's dead.
Okay. So we talked about the city, right?
Mhm.
And that how that was foreshadowing. What
And the
other
map, right.
foreshadowing?
So
Yeah.
he went and talked to Kimberly at one point. Kimberly was in jail,
Right.
and like,
Kimberly
Why
gets
did it-
introduced like 3 seasons early, practically,
Basically,
like,
yeah.
but their motivations are said. Like McDougal says things like, "You know why we need to destroy the military," and Kimberly's like, "No, I killed those officers because I wanted to. I am not
Right.
a hero. Do not put me down on your level for that reason." And just
Which
kind of
is
hints of it at
ironic,
him,
but-
Kimberly knowing a lot more of the things. McDougal was also using alchemy as well as the alchemy, and so that was the first time we see
Oh.
that. He was
Mhm.
using
I
it in
didn't catch
tandem.
that.
Right. You have to really be
Yeah.
looking for things. They throw a whole lot of stuff in that first episode of highlighting future foreshadowing. And McDougal was using a philosopher's stone, even though he knew
Right.
the cost of it. And he was kind of hinting at it. And he quickly figured out things of like the automail and Al's body. And so they had committed the taboo, something or other.
Mhm.
They show Mustang getting wet because he used fire and that melted the ice. And then it's like, please only be useless on rainy days.
Right. So some of this, it's hard to say it's foreshadowing because it's like the first episode, right? It's like establishing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like, definitely Mustang gets played for a joke like the first dozen episodes or whatever, where they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody splash you with a water balloon again?" So but
It's only
Well,
really
is
two
it
important
this
times, and this
episode?
being one of them.
Is it this episode or one of the following ones where he's, "Oh, I'm Mustang. I'll show you when it's raining," and he doesn't
Oh, yeah,
register that it's raining.
It's a later episode.
That's in a
I'm
few
pretty sure.
episodes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like episode 6 or something.
Yeah, with
it's
the
also
Scar confrontation.
yeah. I think one of the other things that they highlight is that King Bradley, the Fuhrer, is the one who kills McDougal, and
right.
that
he's,
it's an
he's no
interesting-
pushover.
Yeah.
Right.
he's no pushover.
Right. It's definitely a bit of a surprise that it's like, because he pretty much just like evaporates him, and it's one of those Japanese tropes, right? It's not even an anime one, but it's just like, oh, did he hit him or not until he falls to pieces, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't actually remember the Fuhrer was like revealed this early in the show.
It was. I don't
well,
think
as
it's even
far
a
as
reveal, right?
there's something special. Yeah, there's
There's
something.
No, I don't
he's-
mean okay. Sorry,
he's
in
playing
this
possum.
block we've watched, not early,
Oh, I
like
see.
the first couple,
Oh,
but in
that
the
you
1 to
don't see
14.
him.
No, that he's Wrath.
Yeah, that is revealed.
That part.
Only episode 14, but it
Mhm.
is. There's some weird hints, and like it kind of goes
Gotcha.
back and forth. Is he? Can he fist him? Can he not? Keep it secret. But I feel like there's almost a lot of dramatic irony, like deliberately in the show, because you get the Maze Hughes talking to himself.
Right.
What? It's so horrible. I can't believe this is a thing.
I very much
you know
dramatic
more than the
irony
characters
is
do
the right
all the
thing.
time.
Yeah.
Right. You find out Maze Hughes dies, and Ed and Al are just talking about how they'd be nice to him next time they see him. Sad episode, right?
Mhm.
So it's playing with what the audience knows versus what all the characters know, and it's very good at keeping track of who knows what.
Yeah,
and does so
it's-
very effectively.
It does that in some prominent places, right? For sure, where it tips the hand to us, and then you see it through the Elric brothers or through somebody else. But yeah,
I do think the show is very good also at cutting out or focusing on stuff that fits very well thematically. Looking back, I always thought that this first part is full of a lot of standalone episodes, but all of them have to do with human life or human sacrifice in some way, or
Right.
a
And they'll
philosopher's
come
stone.
back for reasons.
Right.
Like they're like the Lior episode always seems like something that's just a standalone one-off over there, except that the conflict in Lior does come back, and it really does matter in
It's-
terms of it's completing
It's
part
one
of
of
the
the things
circle.
Macy's talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
right.
And then, so that's a huge thing. Then on the other hand, you
Right.
have what? You have, yeah, even just that episode where they're in Automail City, right? Rush Valley.
Mhm.
And they make a point of talking about this woman's pregnant, she's giving birth, and something that can't be accomplished even with alchemy. And they tie that in with that whole can't create life thing. I don't know. So it seems like it's a very focused show, and it knows exactly the things it's talking about. And then there's that one episode that also kind of feels a little bit like filler, but it's all about the natural world. They're trapped on an island, flashback as kids, trapped on an island and learning about
Yeah,
the circle
one
of
is
life.
all this one.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, there's not I don't think there's much like Justin said about what movie was it? Where there's no wasted moment. There isn't really anything that's like not there for a reason
Mhm.
Sure.
in the show.
If there's anything that's like that,
Until
it's
later,
kind of the fight
so.
scenes, but even the fights the one fight scene that went on too long are the Chimera ones, like you were saying earlier. I think maybe before we
Sure.
were recording. But even then, it's this tragic, hopeless battle, and everyone just keeps dying.
I'd say like the first fight with Greed probably goes on a little long, for an early fight. Is that in the first 14 episodes? But
Yeah.
It is.
yeah. So
Just barely.
so yeah, and I mean part of it really is establishing these guys as hard to perish, right? Which is kind of the main thing. And that's one of the things that I'm playing around with, potentially incorporating for some key players into like a D&D campaign, right? Because while it does make the show kind of drag on and you're just kind of watching them trade blows and there's only so long you can watch that, like, it's an interesting concept for like, these are like plot relevant bad guys. You can't just like show up and transmute them into a hole in the ground and then move on. They are badasses and they are way past you. And, you kind of get an explanation. I don't know if it's by 14. I think it's much, much later, but it's like, what would I care what an ant thinks of me? And that's kind of the impression you should be building about these guys is like, yeah, I mean, they're kind of fighting with you, but almost certainly you're not actually a challenge. It's, you got to be having the conversation, right? Because of what happens with Greed, who brings him down? It's not Ed. So
it's not even Wrath. It's this mysterious father figure who looks like their dad, right?
Well, yeah, kind of, but it is.
I mean, it is
yeah.
Wrath who takes him
Right.
down.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's like, yeah, at that point, dude's bound in chains. We don't know anything about Daddy's powers and whatever, but so
I think one of the reasons you'll build up the perfect defense and Greed is nobody can make a scratch on him. He's got loyal followers. He's not all that bad of a guy, weirdly enough. And this other character cuts right through him, and then that guy's king of the world, and he's even subservient to this other mysterious figure. So, indulging a bit in the Greed fight, maybe it pads out time a bit, but maybe it also builds up. Yeah, sure, this guy's a badass, but Worf just got punched, and Worf just got put in chains, and now he's being reduced to blood and drunk by this bad guy. So like it's that Worf, the problem of Worf.
Well,
it kind of works that way too.
What
You don't think so?
I wouldn't fully agree with that either, because while I said like, the fight with Greed does go on a little bit longer, I think you still are learning things about it, because despite the fact that they're hard to perish and he's got an impenetrable shield, Ed does draw blood, right? Like Ed does figure out his shit. So he's not untouchable, which is a very important thing. And as everybody knows, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And so, you know, like you kind of get some of that early stuff where it's like he can do the shield or heal, but not both. And so there are limitations to what their power are, which is a little ironic considering towards the ending, right?
Mhm.
And once we know what you know is going on with the homunculi and everything like that, you know, I don't know there's a good reason why he couldn't do both, but let's just say because he can't. But you learn
Processes
stuff
are
like
different.
that. Yeah, you learn stuff like that, and you learn some other things, right? Even during the greed fight, you know. So it's not fully wasted, but like if there's a lull, like I would, that's one that comes to mind, right? Like even the what is it? Apparently the Alchemist Anguish, right? Everybody's favorite episode, right? There's stuff going on in the background and things like that, where it's like even if you think, you know, hey, we're not really covering a lot of ground, it all comes to pay off by the end, right? And I think that's kind of what Andreas was saying. I don't remember which movie, you know, I was talking about or whatever, but it's a thing I'm a fan of for sure, which is if there's a detail, it gets used somewhere, right?
I think it's the Fifth Element, maybe.
Maybe, sure, yeah. So anyway, yeah.
The thing about the greed fight is you kind of touched on it, Justin. Is like they were learning each other, and so as it's being shown to the audience of how his ultimate shield works and how his healing works, and it shows that Ed is learning it, and Ed is figuring out how it's vulnerable because it's made out of human body parts, component pieces. They're forcing it out of carbon, and so therefore he just transmuted it to be extremely weak. But even Greed didn't understand what it had done, because once he healed, he like turned around and like destroyed a bit of stone or something. It's like, no, it's still as hard as always. So what happened? They were learning each other, and this is just, it was a step of showing how much broader the world is in this anime, because until then it's just kind of much more focused and closed on like Maze and Lior and the Elric brothers. But after that point, it starts veering much wider of figuring what's going on with the broader world.
Yeah. Okay, so first episode, we got the foreshadowing and stuff like that. Were there any other big points that we didn't cover there?
No, it is a brand new opening for a show that's for an anime that had just been made 3 years making again. So they started from a fresh way, catch your attention. Maybe there's some new stuff. This is a new show. Don't just expect it to be the same story that it was before. That's great.
Right.
But they do very quickly go over the same backstory in a condensed amount of episodes. Like
they do. Yeah.
In like as an episode like 2 is they go through the trying to resurrect Trisha, their mother, and the cost of it and the rehab, and Mustang and Hawkeye went over to Resin Bull and found them, and found like almost just after it had all been done, when Rhea and Hawkeye have a moment together of like, why did Hawkeye join the military? It's there was somebody I had to protect, and they bond a little bit of that. And Mustang walks away after trying to talk to Ed, like in the question of, is he going to take the state alchemist exam? Like, there was fire in his eyes, so it's in his theme. But in looking at their childhood, there's a small point I never noticed until this point, or I was writing it down. Trisha didn't recognize what a transmutation circle was, even though she'd seen Hohenheim do alchemy, because Hohenheim never needed a transmutation circle.
Ooh, nice. Yeah,
nice catch.
That's a good call. Wow, yeah.
That does make sense, because I think when I watched it my first time through, there were some moments like that in their background where I'm like, how does she not know this? And yeah, it's because, holy crap. That's one of those details that really elevates the show, right? You know, so.
Well, if you like details like that, maybe we should do an Attack on Titan retrospective, because that's full of stuff like that. Well, that's really much harder to watch. This is much more pleasant.
I hated that one, so I'm not watching that again.
This is more pleasant. So I mean, I've heard tale of Attack on Titan, but like,
what a miserable.
This was properly gruesome at places. So if Attack on Titan's past that, then
Attack on Titan gets into that grim, dark, existential fear a lot, and then it changes a lot of different things. It's much more unsettling. This is much bit more actiony.
Right. It's definitely the boys anime show, and I guess if it's one I could spoil the big ending, right? We can do that on this show. We spoil everything. I kind of see how the because you're setting up basically almost a human sacrifice in the very second episode, because they're going over the kid's backstory. That idea of human sacrifice and humans involved in equivalent exchange through the entire backstory and every episode of this run, of the first 14 episode run, except maybe the first. Well, of course, and Freezer Man knows about it. That got me thinking about that intro for what could at least in the dub,
exactly.
what could equal what could equal the value of a human soul.
Right.
Well, and that's the point, because it's so valuable, it becomes a secret ingredient. It becomes the thing that you will use in the most powerful transmutation in this twisted, evil little nation. And so there's layers of irony even in the intro, which sounds like this rhetorical question is like, here's the problem. How are they going to get their bodies back? When it's really is, that's the problem. That's how they're going to get their bodies back, but they don't want to do it. Or that's how they could get their bodies back, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to use.
I mean, functionally, I mean, especially with like alchemy, it seems like there would be a path for them to get their bodies back, but really the more important thing is like the reason why they're missing limbs or their entire body and whatever is because that was an exchange they made. And so
and that's an important small detail of this backstory bit of like when it shows the cost, and like Ed has lost his leg essentially, talking to that version of God. It says, I can only show you this much for the toll you have paid of what he saw behind the doors. And his immediate reaction was, I want to see more.
Right. Well, and it takes us almost like 30 more episodes to find out, the obvious thing of, wait a minute. If it costs me an arm and a leg, what the fuck does Al know? Because he's got his whole body
it's his own door, right? That's one of the things.
Yeah.
It's really got that. Well, not sophistry. There's that old solipsism. There's that like 19th century like occult movement that used a lot of the same imagery. Was it
Theosophy, Kabbalistic Hermeticism?
Yeah, theosophy. So it's got that theosophical bent to it. It's kind of an aesthetic.
Oh yeah, that door is like straight out of Hermeticism. Like she did do a lot of research into the history of alchemy, Hermeticism, and all of the imageries. Like I've seen the images of the like 1500s something book drawn down, and it is the same image as that
Kabbalistic
door.
Stuff. Yeah, all that mess. So
that's cool.
It's there's some creepy, weird stuff in there, which is appropriate because the show is creepy and weird. There's lots of nasty things in it, but. I bring that up because you find out also that the door he opened was not just the door; it's his door, right? It's not like he sacrificed his brother to gain the knowledge. It's that he sacrificed the arm and leg and inadvertently, maybe because he wasn't thinking of it or wasn't limiting it or didn't have the will. The brother got sucked in and had to give up his whole body.
Right. It does. I mean, to be fair, just to amend your statement a little bit, there is an impression that they make the sacrifice knowingly, but as a part of it, they had amnesia from the whole process. Like the human brain can't retain that information or whatever, right? Because you even see like what the director was saying, like this is how much I can show you for the toll you paid and that sort of thing. It's an equivalent exchange, and I don't know. At what point would you be like, oh yeah, I totally want all this knowledge, but I'm going to give up my entire body? What use is the knowledge at that point, right? Unless, he got so much knowledge that he knew that it was going to be fine or something along those lines. I don't know, but I don't get the impression that they were duped, I guess is what I'm saying.
I suppose that's true.
So,
that's true.
Yeah.
Looking at this, I don't think I'm too worried about the City of Heresy, that whole Father Cornello thing.
But it is important, like we mentioned, right?
It's
the
important.
rebellion.
The things that are important about it is Rose as a character, the fact that there was this religion and it caused an uprising, and Ed and Al went there to see about the miracles. The guy had chimeras. The guy was being supported by the homunculi. And when they left...
And he had a philosopher's stone. So
yeah, something. When they left, they were reporting everything to the government, and the government was sending in military to fix things.
Right. Everything. Importantly, everything was fine when they left.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. that's one of those details. So,
And in this version of the anime, it's only one episode, which is good. I think it was 2 or 3 episodes in the other one, and it just felt really drawn out. There was this whole subplot about Rose's boyfriend had died, and the Cornello was promising to resurrect him, and he did it by like basically smushing a whole bunch of parrots together, and it was just repeating her name over and over again. Really creepy, but just kind of unnecessary.
yeah, especially because we got the next episode to cover all that. So
yeah. So this the next one, Alchemist English episode 4, was being that we see Show Tucker
Nothing
and Nina
happens.
and Alexander, and he had made a chimera that had spoken, and it said only "I want to die," and then it refused to eat and died of starvation. But he got his state alchemist certification that way, and therefore he was amazing. And 2 years later, now what happens?
and by a total coincidence, his wife just ran out on him at the exact same time. So
Yeah,
That part is revealed at the very end. That is the exact same thing.
it's
Pretty sure.
not, because it's just him and his daughter there, and
True, but
mommy
then his
hasn't
wife
been
ran out of him.
around.
But that it was exactly 2 years ago. Was
Yeah,
the
but
climax.
I think they mentioned, like, she hasn't been around for a couple of years, and then 2 years ago I got my certification, and
right.
like
right.
I feel like, again, all of the pieces were there, which is part of why I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to be one of those shows where it's like I figure it out before the main character does, right?
Which
But
is fine. It's
saying
good.
that, I was rewarded by the fact that Ed's like, I'm sorry, your wife ran away how long ago? And he's just like, in the back of his mind, he's still noodling on it, right? And
Yeah.
so
I mean,
so like,
no one
yeah,
expects somebody to take their child that they adore and smush it into a chimera. You don't walk into the room
Right.
expecting that this is now the child that I've been playing with for the past month. And so it was only
Was it
one
a
word
month?
that she had said. So I don't remember, actually. I think it changes
A
between the
period
different-
of time,
and-
but
yeah,
Yeah.
some period of time, enough for Nina to call Ed older brother, and that's
Yeah,
all
big
she had to
brother.
say for him to understand everything that had happened. He's
Right.
not dumb. He just, like, you don't walk into it expecting that.
Yeah.
Sure.
This
Well,
when
and
I first-
especially for their world, like, they don't know about chimeras, right? Which is another thing that's interesting, because it's
Well,
like
they
they've got
do.
the lab and whatever. Well, I
that-
mean, they do,
Father
but they
Cornello
don't know about
transmutes a chimera, right?
what.
So the Cornello
Right.
had chimeras, but they were
But you got the
basically just
Elric
beasts.
brothers, right? Like,
Yeah, animal, right?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
The talking chimera is the fun thing.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's what I'm talking about, like the human chimeras, right? So
But again, another example of human sacrifice.
Sure.
Twice now, obviously. And I will say this episode, I know is kind of memed to death, and like Edward kind of was. It was in the popular consciousness for so long. I watched it. I knew about it. I saw the episodes. Like, oh, that's creepy. As a dad now,
yeah,
it's like
just
it's not just
yeah.
just not creepy. I just can't.
Right.
I don't want to watch this ever again.
Yeah.
Too vivid.
And I
Too vivid.
tell people that all the time, right? That it's like, there are some things that it's like, yeah, that's horrific. Like I have a tough time with, like, Leon the Professional, right? Because it's like violence on women and children. Like, that is my golden standard. Like, that's my exhibit A on that shit. Bugs the hell out of me, right?
Good
But
for you, dude. Right on.
and that was before. No, and I love the movie, right? But that one scene is like, how do I fast forward this part? But like, that was before I had kids. And
Right,
so it's
right,
like, as much as I was, down that path and everything already, yeah, with kids, it's so much harder. This one didn't hit the same. I was fairly disgusted flatly. And like I've mentioned a couple of times, I feel like it gets pleasantly resolved at the end. I'll still noodle on that and soul search a little bit, but so far I've been okay with it. But it's like the fact that Scar just randomly shows up, I was like, perfect.
Yeah. At the end of this
It's
episode,
just
Scar is
perfect.
introduced.
Yeah.
Because Scar is on his mission. In the beginning of the episode, it was also introduced that he was
he's
killing
there.
other alchemists. He killed
Right.
the Iron Blood alchemist Basque Grand, and now Scar is here. And he's looking for Tucker because he was a state alchemist, and he kills Tucker really quickly. But then he sees Nina, and he understands what happened to her, and she knows that her dad was just killed, and she's crying, and then she's killed.
Right.
You know,
Which, I mean, still gut-wrenching and sickening and terrible, but also kind of a mercy. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Scar's killing
tough,
Tucker
man.
for revenge, but he's killing Nina out of mercy because there is no one doing what's been done to her. Everyone recognizes that and says so.
Just a miserable thing. Oh man.
The next
I will say that's one of the weaknesses of the show. I think though is how the kids are written kind of one note with the perfect cutesy thing said at every time, and it doesn't play as authentically to me.
Yeah, where are
having
the little
toddlers in the house.
bastards?
That would be pride. Silliness.
Well, that one,
yeah.
Well, see, that one's definitely fake. Obviously, we know that, right?
Right.
But all the kids in the show are written in like the cutesy, tropey way of it's fine. There's a lot more personality and a lot in toddlers, even by the age of 3. Actually, sure. I had my 3-year-old daughter who just had her third birthday on my lap while we're watching the episode. She insisted on watching it with me, where Maze Hughes' daughter has her 3rd birthday party, and there's 3 candles on the birthday cake. And so now, however, because the daughter said, "I'm 2," no 3, my daughter's going around saying, "I'm 2." I'm 2. No, you're not. You're 3 in September. No, I'm 2. So,
cute. Yeah.
September's not over.
Everything else, though, I don't know. I don't know what the kids are. I don't know what could have made it better either. It just kind of bothered me. And the other, it's like that's when it leads.
Turn them all into chimeras and shoot them.
When it leans on its tropes and on its ideas and its world and its world building. When it leans on the stylized, super simple drawings to show shock, or like they're wobbly because they have big emotions, or there's one bead of sweat dripping down the face to show frustration, or when
I was going to say one of the things I appreciated about this is it was one of the less tropey anime. I mean, they're there. They're always going to be there.
But they're there. They're still there, and it kind of undercuts. I think it's a 2009 thing.
I don't think you're ever going to get an anime where it's going to be without it. So if it's lessened, then
yeah. I mean, the ones
part of
that
it is
I like,
just how they communication.
Yeah, the ones that I like have very few, if any, tropes. Right, like which tropes are in Ghost in the Shell like that?
Well, see, that's a different genre within anime.
Is it, right? Or is it not in anime? I'm not going to go down you. There's 50 flavors of anime. We said anime tropes, and they don't have. Yeah, right. Who cares?
But I'm talking about in the shonen battle anime. It is the standard. Those are the standard tropes, and that's usually.
Yeah, I was going to say there's probably less in the things.
Hayao Miyazaki is not in the same kind of thing.
No, but Miyazaki's got tropes in there too.
He's got his tropes. He's got the Miyazaki
like there's difference between, say, Princess Mononoke even and Akira compared to something like this, where you're going to get a much more grounded, serious, very little. Even there's even a bunch of Gundam stuff that has like very few tropes in that sense. I guess then if we're considering the difference between a shonen, which is what this skews more into, and an anime like those of the shonen stuff, this has less tropes than most of them.
And less of the worst ones. Like there's certain kinds of anime, and remember, I think we should compare like to like. When you have film, like feature film anime, that's a different kind of thing. I suppose the Tachikomas and Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, but again, that'll be
they're adorable, but they are also weapons of war. So
and they also make the heroic sacrifice a couple times. So
I'm not saying that there aren't tropes. I was saying that they're not necessarily the anime tropes, right?
The visual, definitely not the visual tropes, but I think there's also a difference between the TV broadcast anime and the film, like the art film kind of thing that you get. Even Lupin III Castle of Cagliostro from like early 80s, right? That one has some of the storytelling tropes and quite a lot of them, but it doesn't have the bead of sweat or the stylized rhyme or the woo wobbly thing.
Right.
And some of those didn't exist then, probably. But
those are not the ones that even bother me that much. I get bothered by the things like none of them can ever show any emotion to each other. Like this one, they clearly express that they have feelings for one another and stuff. Half the time, they can't ever admit that they have any feelings for each other in any way.
Bad writing.
Well, yeah,
or it's a different flavor of anime, right? If you want emotions, you got to go watch the high school bullshit, where all they've got is emotions. So,
no,
but they never communicate
with each other in a normal. Well, that's the thing that they communicate information to each other. Nobody like another big trope thing is like the secrets that everybody's keeping from each other and that bullshit. It's like
Yeah,
no, they'll talk to each other
yeah.
in this one.
Yeah.
I think it's wise
Yeah,
that they're
and-
organized by audience, because this is the boys' power fantasy, and at some point we're analyzing the boys' power fantasy,
Sure.
which is ultimately a message about growing up by the very end. That's one of the things I was
Yeah.
going to bring up earlier. Is the whole problem, the whole reason I got into this.
He's
message
literally
is
growing.
he's playing at power fantasies, right? The alchemy, the science of alchemy, is a power fantasy for the character, and it caused so much trouble. He's trying to undo it through the entire stretch. And there's the main villain is basically having his own power fantasy, and it defeats that idea of having power fantasy by giving it up and giving up alchemy as a whole. Sure, he wants it back. It'll be nice to have it back, but he'd give it up for the sake of his brother, to restore the world, to beat the bad guy. And it's kind of a subversion of the whole basis of the boy power fantasy. But in the meantime, it has the action scenes. You can still indulge that. But it's fitting that it's all about, in the end, giving it up. So that said, along the way, it's still a show for 12-year-old boys to
Yeah, it's a bit older than that.
12, 13-year-old boys. It's you're supposed to look
I mean,
up to them, right?
the main, right. I was going to say the main characters are 14, 15, right? So
You
it's
look
like,
up to them.
you know,
You look up to the older
yeah.
I mean, I
kids.
So
first
it probably
started
is,
consuming FMA when I was like 12-ish, maybe a little bit younger than that.
Yeah.
But it's just like I think this is pegged for age of 15-ish, and then
Maybe.
it's going to have a large variance as to whoever. Like, if a 10-year-old is consuming it and loves it, then who's to tell them that they shouldn't? But it's
Right.
not necessarily meant.
Their
for them.
parents presumably would control that.
Well,
listen
right.
here, you European. No, I'm just kidding.
I
I
think-
wanted to lampshade the fact that she said she was a 12-year-old boy. So let's continue this conversation.
Did I say boy?
No, but
Oh, okay.
I was like, this is targeted at 12-year-old boys. And when I was 12, no,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think the director was more of a 12-year-old boy than some of us at certain points.
unlikely. But I mean, maybe some of you. So
Oh, definitely more than Andreas. If you want me to spell it out.
I think of all these
Yeah.
episodes, the only ones I would call kind of quasi filler episodes are the ones that are so compressed they're just doing setup, like the
Well, the interlude episode is probably the clearest one, right?
gotten
Hohenheim
that
at the
one yet.
fire.
that's
oh, we haven't gotten that one
big
yet.
deal.
That
That's a
one's
lot of
questionable.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one is questionable, but in
Like,
these
it is,
episodes,
but they
Um,
make it work. You know,
Well, right.
It's
so
not filler can have a point. It's not
So
filler gets a bad name like a lot of things. It's how you use it. It's like subversion. It's not bad in and of itself. It's just how.
I guess what I mean is he passes the state alchemist examination, but that's also the episode that gives you backstory on the kids, right? They stop off and they see Marco, and then Marco's confronted by a homunculus at the end, and that gets them to be able to find the research. They find out that the secret ingredient is people. Soylent Green is people.
yes.
There's kind of a lot happening, but also kind of not a lot happening. It's moving so quickly.
you
trying
are
to
in the
get
first
to
act
the
of the
real stuff.
anime.
Yeah, right.
You're having first act complaints.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the episodes and we're like 40 minutes through and on episode
Yeah.
5, theoretically, like we're all around, but
Yeah, we're like we
like
don't.
episode
We're
five-
talking about it as a chunk, right? 1 to 14, then per episode. But if
There are
there's
some
anything
per
important,
episodes that are really fun, depending on
Part-
the different lines and whatnot. Like
part of my
May's funeral.
interjection though is like 5 could arguably be a filler episode.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like I don't fully remember it, but it's like I remember the action, but I don't remember it being contained in an episode. But it's like Lust and Gluttony are in Lior trying to spark a rebellion. This is the one where Scar's on the rampage and Mustang is out in the rain, right? And so
Yeah,
it's
so
like,
this
you
is
know,
the first real introduction of Scar as an examination of who he is and how he is seen by the Elrics and Mustang and the military. So
and this is where he figures out that like he's only doing destruction, right? Or is
Yes.
that come later still?
No,
Okay,
this is
No.
exactly it. So they're in the
Yeah.
the episode is called Reign of Sorrows. It is raining. Everybody is sad because
Yeah.
Nina is dead.
Yeah,
And
right.
Scar is just about to kill Ed, and he kind of like he learns he didn't know the automail. He figures out that there was automail, so he just like changes it and he just destroys Ed's arm. And
Poor Ned.
basically
And Owl's side, right? Owl's
yeah.
side.
He also
Yeah.
does like a huge gaping hole in Al's side. And
right.
like
It's
Ed
a survivor's
doesn't
guilt.
have any option, and so they make a bargain. Ed says, "If you don't hurt my little brother, and I won't fight you." And Scar says, "He's not a state alchemist. He's not my target." Okay, and like at that moment, Hawkeye, I think, shoots Scar or something. Like somebody comes to the
Yeah.
rescue,
It's
and
Hawkeye. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Everyone's there. The flame alchemist is useless again. It's raining.
yeah, Hawkeye interferes. Armstrong appears, sparkling, muscly, and all of that. And Al later becomes incensed because Ed gave up. And that happens a couple more times. Like Ed is not allowed to give up and just die. Al keeps pushing him on of like, you have to keep living.
Right.
There's an interesting dynamic in even this couple episodes where there's a lot of these big drama, and then there's a whole episode just about feelings and fallout. Like there's the big drama of Mina, and this is an episode really about feelings, and I just want to die. And Scar's kind of there as, you know, suicide by serial killer.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's going on. And then you have the fifth laboratory
We'll call this
episode.
a win-win. So
You have the
You
fifth
want to
laboratory
die? I want to
episode.
kill you. What?
And you know,
this is match made in heaven or what?
There's 3 guys, not 2 in 2 suits of armor, but you know, the one set is killed and the laboratory was fallen down. But Barry the Chopper's words live on in the next episode because now Al thinks he's just fake. Right. Al thinks he's fake.
So does Barry the
It's
Chopper.
an episode about it's the feelings episode as response to that. And they do talk about it. They do bring it up. They do have that dilemma and that internal turmoil. It's very clear to the audience, and it's maybe it's resolved a little bit too cleanly. But as I recall, Al's anxiety shows up again. Is that right? Does that show up again later in the show, or is it pretty much just this episode?
It pretty much it's there, and then it disappears, and then it's more about like whether or not he can stay healthy, so-called healthy, and it's not the same thing as if he's fake.
True, that's true.
The one more thing I just want to say about Reign of Sorrows is it's raining, and Mustang is about ready to like try to fire at Scar, and Scar is trying to attack Mustang. Hawkeye comes up and cuts him off and like hamstrings him from below so that they miss each other because Hawkeye knows he's going to be useless. It is raining.
Right.
She got to watch out for her bay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember being impressed by that, I think, right? Yeah, because she sweeps the leg on Mustang to save him. Yeah, like that was a really cool scene.
Well, my question was later on, because I thought Mustang could only do fire. That was his only thing, but I'm pretty sure he does like a wall shield later on when he's blind, right? Like he does an earth shield at some
He also does human transmutation at one point.
Unwillingly.
Well, he gets forced into it.
Spoiler. His name there.
Spoiler.
My point is, like, if he could do that whole time, like, I mean, it may not be his forte, but fucking do it. You don't have to worry about the rain.
It's the flame stuff is the one that's on his gloves. And that's his transmutation circle. So, and he's got the super secret.
It's
knowledge
a
about
thing
how to use it.
It's a thing they don't really explain, but is definitely kind of a trope of their world or whatever. Because it's like, if you think about it, right, all of the alchemists have code names based off of what made them an alchemist, presumably, right? Because like in the first episode, he's what, the freezing alchemist or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, he doesn't just freeze shit. That's kind of reductive, right? Mustang's special in the sense that he knows like an ancient secret technique that only one other guy in the whole world knew, right? And so like it's possible there was some additional sacrifice, or it's possible he's got a specialized transmutation circle to make it work or something along those lines. And like the Full Metal Alchemist part, like that's just irony, I think, because it's funny for the show, right? So it's like, oh, you're followed around by a big suit of armor, we'll call you the Full Metal Alchemist. So
I mean, it wasn't because he was being followed by a suit of armor. It was because of
that's what he did.
You know, it was just like it always struck me as one of two. It was either you have your special, like alchemy itself is you're transmutating. You can do like there should be general skills that everyone could do. You know, you make an earth wall, you make something metal that isn't metal, yada yada yada, and then you have your specialty ones. But you know, if you could do both, like, all right, it's raining, you can't use your main thing. You still don't want to die. Put up a fucking wall.
Well, okay, here's one for you. It is flame based, but one that he does use later, and I don't remember which act it is, but he does transmute water a few times because he does transmute it into oxygen and hydrogen gas. That's a very big thing for the show. So he does have some, but apparently the battle alchemy, for lack of a better word, maybe he's just a one-track mind. Maybe he's just like, well, obviously instinctually I've got to use the fire, and then
well, I mean, yes, but the thing is,
that's the loaded pistol is the fire for him. Anything
but he
else
uses the wall when he's blind. He can't use his fire, and he's going up against the strongest enemy there is. Like you would, I mean, clearly it's something he knows he can do. It's just, I don't know.
Isn't everybody except everybody we see? They are all, like everybody except Ed and Al are like hyper specialized in some way. In at least here in 1 to 14, is there an alchemist that isn't just very specialized? Because like they're all specialized.
Well, I mean, they're but that's who they learn from. So I was going to say, like, she does kind of the same stuff.
They don't. We don't really see them do general, just basic alchemy. It's all like, I have a glove with a fire. I have these gloves where I punch things. They become really nice sculptures of myself.
Sure. Well, even Hohenheim and the Dwarf and the Flask, they all kind of stick to the same kind of things that Ed and Al do, right? Like they make platforms, they shoot.
Hohenheim is even a little bit more specialized. He's kind of a little bit more structured on medical. He has a bit more of an interest there. But Izumi Curtis is very well rounded, and so are Ed and Al. Of just especially anything that is kind of the elemental evocation. They do a lot of the shield walls. They do a lot of like just throwing things, changing things, very, very tangible there. They don't really seem to do anything with fire. I don't remember.
Well, no, it's not what you would call the traditional elements or anything. They're not throwing around water. They're not doing air blasts. They're not summoning lightning and all that other stuff.
Which in alchemy you wouldn't normally expect a lot of those things anyway, right? Like Scar is almost an exception to that. And even still, like it's usually shown, like the exception for his thing is that it can travel, like beyond using like the earth bending or whatever to basically tear up like the whole area of cobblestones or whatever. Like when he blows something up, he can blow up giant chunks of section, and he seems to be able to target and control that somewhat. But yeah, it like do we see anybody hurling lightning bolts? Because I just don't think it's that kind of magic system, right? So we don't see anybody moving wind that I can think of. But
not in these 14 episodes I just rewatched, at least. They're all like, I guess the closest thing is Mustang needs a spark, but other than that, he's generating a lot of fire from very little.
Yeah, he can control the fire and grow it and kind of guide it once it exists, but he needs at least a spark, or his gloves are made for that. When he does the snap, it creates a spark and works for that.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily to go through the specific episode by episode things, like the episode 6 is where we do meet Marco as they're going back to Risenbull, and that is a really important thing.
Right.
Armstrong was on the train to protect the Elric brothers because one is armless, and the other one is like broken down in the point that he's just in a box in pieces back with the sheep.
He's doing his C-3PO impression. So
yeah. And Armstrong remembers Marco from the Ishvalan War. And Marco's terrified. He doesn't want to go back to that place. He doesn't want to remember any of that stuff. And so when they walk up to the door, he shoots and almost kills Ed because he's so like, I'm not going back there. And he's very terrified. But he has a Philosopher's Stone. And then they had been finding other people in that village of like, who is this person and how do I find him? And he's been healing their broken bones with just a flash of light, and that's it. And so he's protecting this whole village with medical alchemy in ways that it can't be. And so even though Ed doesn't yet know what the secret is of the Philosopher's Stone, he's saying, I'm not going to take it away from this village that's saving their lives.
Right.
And that's what we get the note of, go find my notes in the 5th library, something or other, the truth within the truth. And then they go back to Risenbull, do the automail stuff. And there's a lot of Armstrong being all sparkly and muscly and very sentimentality. And then they just do the bunches of going to a library and it's burnt down. I remember, especially in the original anime, that they would go to this library and it was burnt down. They go to that another next library and it's burnt down. It was like a whole comedic thing for a few minutes.
Yeah, there was a couple of places, right, that they went, I think, that are burned down. Yeah. And then it was like, well, there's only 4 laboratories, but what about this one? So
Yeah.
Right next to the prison.
Which, but also potentially alchemy, right? Because it's like if you're making a circle with, a star in the middle, then 5 points. So
yeah. This is an introduction of Sheska, which is a funny little unnecessary character. It's kind of fun though. She has a perfect memory and can therefore rewrite entire books that she's read. And for some reason, she's read like 12 of these cooking books that were in the wrong section. That were handwritten by Dr. Marco, and well, now they have his notes. And then eventually she gets a job because all of the burning down libraries put Hughes out of. He didn't have his paperwork anymore, and now she's just going to rewrite all the paperwork. And very fun little moment there.
Yeah. Deus Ex practically. I mean, but yeah, I totally forgot because I don't think she shows up after a certain point. So, but yeah, powerful little ability. So,
yeah. They crack the code of the notes pretty quickly, relatively quickly. I felt like they condensed it, but then they're immediately depressed because they can't possibly use people for the Philosopher's Stone. And then there's the truth within the truth. And Ed was getting depressed and almost asked Al an uncomfortable question, but then didn't. And because there was the Lieutenant Ross and the other guy, I don't remember. And they were trying to guard them, and they'd kind of heard everything. And Armstrong walks up, and I think they specifically they answer to Armstrong anyway. And so when he was like, why are you depressed? And what is things? And how can I hug you into happiness again? He ordered the Elric brothers not to go to the 5th laboratory. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And of course they do.
And they're a couple of badass children and obstinate as hell. Yeah. So obviously they're going. So.
Yeah. And then the 5th lab is.
We promise. Literally next scene, sneaking in.
Right.
Yeah. We get number 66 and number 48. 66 is Barry the Chopper, and 48 is Slicer.
It's with 66. My friend was like, "Wait, how his brother is in a body like that? So how did he get fooled by why can he still move his armor?" And I had to like go back and look, and like when he reveals the mark, it is in the head. So when the head is off the body's not supposed to be able to do anything. And then it's revealed there's a second mark. And I actually missed that the other times when I watched it, that it was like the mark was on the head, and that's why he gets surprised, because he's like, "Huh, impossible."
The first Slicer, you mean?
Because there's 2 in 1.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
One of the things that kind of go on.
Yeah, we got to talk about Barry, and I know we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the whole, depression thing, and is it possible that that Al is completely a construct, right? And stuff like that, because that's going to play big into what the next episode is it, or
it's
a couple.
Yeah, it's a couple of them really, because Barry the Chopper is fighting Al, and just like Barry thinks that it's all spooky, and he like lifts up his helmet and he's like, there's no one there, and then Al does the same thing and Barry's all freaked out, and just like, well, memories are just data you could have just been entirely constructed. And this doesn't bother Barry whatsoever, but it like, because Barry doesn't like care about his life, he's very weird, but
he is insane, so
yeah, he just really wants to cut people with his cleaver. Otherwise he's really kind of happy-go-lucky.
There's a song about this, I think. So, but anyway.
Yeah. While the ones inside, Ed and 48 and 49 are having like an existential conversation of what does it mean to be human? And therefore you must be human because my little brother is human and I can't accept that he's not. Then lust and envy show up.
which was a really good scene too, especially in another kind of dramatic irony moment, because we know that's what Ed thinks about Al, and Al is worried about being a total construct and that his brother doesn't value him as a person, which is absolutely not true. And it kind of makes his self-doubt, it's understandable, but it's also a little bit of anguishing knowing that, because like, you have to be human because I've got to believe that I can save my little brother. And, even the whole, like, well, we are trying to kill you and everything, but you're the only one that treated us like a human being, so just kind of touching all the way around.
Yeah. At this, when Lust and Envy show up to stop them from revealing secrets or doing anything, Envy also makes a comment of, you can't hurt our sacrifices because they are important. And so that's actually why Envy was just kind of destroying them, is you almost killed somebody that we need to keep. And Ed's arm kind of broke in the middle of this fight. Winry had made a comment that there was more chrome, but it's less strong, something or other. Please don't go break it in more fights. But she also forgot a screw. And so it was kind of reminiscent to the fight that he had with Scar, of being disabled again. They decide to destroy the building, and Envy carries Ed to safety. And then they show Kimberly in prison enjoying the sound of the explosions because he's
I really enjoyed the shamelessness of Rinri here, where it's like, it's my fault. It's my fault. And she's like, yeah, I understand. I'm not mad and stuff. And then he's like, you're not mad? It's like, what are you doing? I was fighting. I can get away with blaming him here. Listen here, you little shit.
Right.
Yeah. I like to just point out, because Hughes is really fun when they're talking. Like, there's a few small points of these episodes of Mason and Mustang talking on the phone, and it's always like Hughes is going on about how adorable his daughter is or how wonderful his wife is, and it's just like everybody's telling him, stop using military resources to talk about your personal life and stop bothering Mustang with all this stuff. But they're really using it as a cover to be able to communicate secretly, and also they're friends. And Mustang is going to be promoted to Central. And so Hughes says he needs to keep his friends close, so he should get married already.
Wild.
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, Ed, I heard you got this blonde babe in your in
Yeah.
your hospital room. She's my auto mechanic.
I know that one was one of those that kind of pulled me out a little bit, though, because I was like, wait a minute, he's like 40 and she's like 14.
Probably not even that old.
Like,
he's probably like 32.
Yeah, maybe, but either way, more than double, and it's inappropriate. So,
but anything, its purpose is to make Ed uncomfortable, which it did, which is good. Yeah, the next episode, it gets into feelings and whether they're created or not. It's even titled "Created Feelings," and Al is moping around, and Winry has to charge a rush fee and all that to get there, but she totally gets away with it and is completely shameless about, yeah, okay, I'll fix things now. Shut up. Hugh says, Ed, I heard you had a girl in your room and you were getting serviced.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
like, not
then
wrong,
Ed has the
but
nosebleed.
Inappropriate. Who has a nosebleed?
Ed has a nosebleed. Because he just went on. I was like, oh, so you seduced your auto mechanic? Okay, that's a good idea. Auto male mechanic. And it's in an anime trope. It's something about Japanese culture thing. If somebody is aroused, I guess, but can't do anything about it, they get nosebleeds, and so it happens a lot in anime.
Yeah.
Okay. That's news to me, actually. I thought I was at least passingly aware of some of these tropes, but
yeah, you've just watched good anime like Miyazaki. Miyazaki does not give his characters nosebleeds.
Yeah, you haven't watched enough shoujo, probably.
Right.
Yeah. Then there's Al has an eruption over all of the things that he's unhappy about, and Ed is like, "Oh, so that's how you feel," and he just walks out. And then Winry gets pissed off and takes her gigantic wrench and starts hitting Al with it, which thankfully he can't feel too much because he's a suit of armor. But then she berates him, and then he feels bad, and then they have to go make up for it.
And then Ed wins for the first time in a sparring match.
Playing a little bit dirty there, but yeah, he does win.
Fights, man. I'm trying not to openly encourage it with my kids, but they're playing a lot of fighting games, and so they're like, "Oh, you're using cheesy moves and whatever," and I'm like, "Man, it's a fighting game. Like the point is to fight, and one of you has got to lose." So one day they'll get the whole like dirty fighting thing. Not that I want to encourage that, but it's like if it's a life and death thing,
Yeah.
cheating is okay. Like, so
Let's see. Episode 10, Separate Destinations. It has a fairly good chunk flashback to the Ishvalan War and Mustang laying out his goals of becoming the Fuhrer because he wanted to basically correct a whole bunch of things and protect all the people he could. And if the people who are below him and he can protect them and they protect him, and he kind of describes a pyramid scheme of protection racket. And Hughes says, yeah, this is a great idea. I'll support you from below. And discussing a whole bunch of the things in the hospital of like doing drawings of what envy looked like and everything. And this is years ago, I noticed that there was this bit. Ed was right-handed and he lost his right arm. So now whenever he's doing these drawings or writing anything down, he has to use his left hand. He had to learn how to use the other hand because he doesn't have that skill in the automail hand.
Okay, nice. That's a hell of a detail. Like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure if you go back to anything when he's drawing the transmutation circles when he's a kid, he's using his right hand. When he's drawing things in the hospital now, he's using his left. So,
wow.
Yeah, and this is when the Fuhrer himself walks in and says, all of the people researching the Philosopher's Stone has gone missing. This list of people that you have on this list and that he shouldn't be in that room anyway. And he orders those people, which is Ed and Alan, Hughes and Armstrong, not to tell anyone. Assume everyone in the military is untrustworthy. The enemy, be discreet. But when the time comes, I will have more work for you to do. And then he sneaks out the window.
Right. I like how he just like jumps out the window, and it's like, I mean, if you didn't otherwise suspect him, it's like it's very clear that the Fuhrer isn't what he seems, right? And
that's like he's a lovable goof, right? They're looking for him.
Well,
he missed the tail, but he's
or
also
a sneaky
very
badass,
intimidating. The sense that he's not just a lovable goof, but he's playing the lovable goof.
Right. Yeah.
I just happen to be here in the South.
Right. The one thing I'm realizing is about some of the lines that Lust and must have been, I think it was Lust and Envy were saying to Ed in the fifth laboratory at the very end, telling him openly that he's a candidate for human sacrifice.
Right.
You already know
this is his Starborn moment. Right, where he just doesn't bother to fucking ask the question. Like, hey, wait a minute, what does that mean?
Well, the thing is, he might think that, human sacrifice is what the military is doing to get philosopher's stones. Maybe does it have something to do with that? Right? Is that what the process? So he's still thinking in the philosopher's stone thing, but with that and Hughes's looking at a map, we don't really see he's looking at a map, but we maybe think about him looking at. He was looking at a map earlier, right? Why don't they care about him? And why don't they care about keeping him in one place and imprisoning him or trying to keep him in one place to be a human sacrifice? Well, it's because the whole country is going to be one, right? That's going to be the big reveal later on. You have enough information to try to think these things through. And it's one of the great marks of the author trusting the audience, keeping the characters in the dark, but giving the audience enough information to try and piece it together. And I'd be surprised if there weren't people who were theorizing that the entire country was a transmutation circle when the manga was first coming out. I'd be surprised if there weren't a couple of people who picked up on that and are like, made the best called shot in fandom history.
Right.
Because the information's there, and it's so rewarding to go back and look and see the seeds that were planted.
And I figured it out early, but not that early, right? Yeah. And so that's the other part. It's like the evidence is there super early, at least in foreshadowing, and you've got enough stuff to put it together, but I didn't fully put it together until Xerxes, right? So, that's the other thing too, but yeah.
So we don't have much left, and we can kind of kind of speed by it.
No, we can't.
I'm gonna skip over most of the Rush Valley stuff because
they had a baby. It was a
they
miracle.
had a baby.
You can't have babies with magic.
The
And
important
that one
thing
girl
is
with the
Winry gets
cannon
an
in her knee that
apprenticeship.
she never shows up again except for like one time off screen. You know, like,
she's there once in a while.
It's super important. Okay.
The important thing is Winry gets an apprenticeship to learn how to do automail better, which Dominic
No,
says
it's not an apprenticeship.
What?
But you can look over my shoulder.
Well, no, she gets for Garfield, not from Dominic, but Dominic says things like maybe she can learn around him a little bit, but like if she does the automail differently or better or something, Ed might grow taller. So that's really important.
That's fair.
But
because
women always want to marry the tall men. Yep.
She does say that's important to her.
We don't know if she's been screwing him up or if he's been screwing him up. So
both.
Yeah, both is good.
This is the episode where Hughes was thinking about all of the stuff that they were just talking about and ordered not to talk about in the hospital. And he puts things together and he runs to the room and he looks at a map and he says, "Oh my God, I have to tell people. I have to tell Mustang." Right. Then he gets attacked by envy. He's going to the military phone to call Mustang, realizes the military is a problem, goes outside to a pay phone and is seen by, then Lieutenant Ross is holding him with a gun, but the mole is missing and it's actually Envy and all that.
Well, but he does also like Envy turns into his wife momentarily, right? Yeah. As well.
Yeah. That's what makes him hesitate.
Right? Exactly. Because that becomes a reference later too. So
yes. So this is the death of Hughes and the episode 12.
I didn't remember it being that early. That's wild.
It's pretty early. Yeah.
Yeah.
All is one, which is a whole bunch of flashback. And we get to see one small flashback of Hohenheim looking really cold. And I really like how this memory takes on different shapes or the different lenses that people have. And it's just, Hohenheim's an asshole and he ran away from the family or something.
Right. He's very much set up as the classic trope of the distant father who, was consumed by his work and, always running around doing something, which is about half true. But, when you see it from Hohenheim's perspective and it totally reverses,
It's really fun. But the Elric brothers, they get to Dublith and they talk to Izumi. I think she attacks him. I heard you became a state alchemist, and now I've just got out of my sickbed, and I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Right.
But they're asking about the Philosopher's Stone, and she says, "Well, there was that one guy once that he knew a lot of information, and it was Hohenheim, and she had no idea that he was their father, and so they're upset."
Wild.
But then, the whole training on the island, which I always found really fun between them, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe it's filler and it's like backstory and stuff, but the fact that it all like comes together and I mean, like it's practically totally fantasy in my mind, right? Because they're like, they're like 10 or 12 or whatever, and
they got to be younger than
alone.
They're like 8 and 9.
Like it, but I thought they did. Oh, because they went to her before they did the taboo, right? So
yes.
And they trained her for years before they went back to try it.
Yeah.
Like unless this country or Japan's, culture with their children is totally wild. Now, if you told me that they were Norwegian kids, maybe, right? But you're gonna sit there and tell me that a couple of 8 or 9-year-olds were like left on an island for more than a week and survived that shit.
I mean, it is the early 1900s.
Maybe, but yeah. So, but
but
other than that, like the fact that it's
there's a lot of food on that island, according to Izumi.
There was a lot of. Did you see the stores they had when they had one day left? They were gruesome.
Because Izumi didn't even plan on taking them on as students or anything, and she didn't want them. Essentially, she kind of shoved them onto the island to see. For a month to see if they would survive. And her husband was like, "Are you sure they're going to be okay?" It's like, that was fine. I was out in the winter at Briggs for a month when I was in my training. And he's like, "Don't compare yourself to normal people."
Oh, right.
I mean, but also her husband is a big softie.
Oh, he is. He's great.
Yeah.
And this is when they, in the flashbacks of them learning, describing what a transmutation circle is. It's a circulation of power and making the matrix and the drawings and everything. And Elle was going like, "Well, why don't you have to do that?" Because she just does the hand clappy thing. and then Ed pings to the fact that she had done the human taboo thing. Like he should have been able to figure
Right.
that out earlier. So that was him being dumb.
Or him being dumb at like for our benefit,
Yeah.
so that we can figure out, oh shit, that's why they can do it without a circle,
Is this
because
the first time-
that's when we get told anyway.
Was this the first time Briggs was brought up?
Yes.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
there was a
that was a nice little bit of
earlier when
Okay.
in the rehab, Ed was able to do alchemy without a circle, and Al was remarking on it, and Ed was like, well, you should be able to too. You can't? And then they just kind of skip past it. So Ed should have had the information
That's
to be able to
fair.
put it together, and he didn't.
Yeah.
But this like next episode was starting out with them confronting each other with like the fact that Al is a empty suit of armor. Ed has the automatal. Clearly, they've done this terrible thing, and Izumi tells the story of how they had tried to conceive and couldn't for a really long time, and then their baby died because she got sick, and she was trying to resurrect the baby, and that's why she's ill now, is because her cost was internal organs.
Right.
Um,
Importantly here too, just to highlight, so like wherever it is, whichever episode and whatnot, but like when they go back to her and she basically chases them off and then she expels them or whatever, and then her husband is like, you're being an idiot, you're not her student anymore, now you're a peer. And then they like storm back in and start, demanding all of these answers from her and stuff. And
that is this
like
episode, and that is
that was a great.
They're now meeting as
too,
equals,
so, right?
And so on that
hell of a graduation. So
and on that playing ground, because they're talking again, it's like Al should know the most of any of them because he lost his whole body, but he can't remember anything. And so Izumi is like, okay, well, I'll talk to somebody, maybe can help restore the memory, and then they just kind of go on with the next day. It cuts to Mustang playing chess with Grumman. I forget, like General's Grumman something or other. And because he's going to be going to Central, this is a graduation gift in his own way of he finally gets to win it at chess. And like, okay, so if I can also get other gifts, please give me all of my people that I would like to take with me. And Gene Havoc, he says like, but wait, I just got a girlfriend. And Mustang says, just break up with her.
Right.
What
a dick, because he keeps his girlfriend close. So
yeah, I was thinking that too. He's like, break up with her. And I was like, Jesus Christ, you're taking your girlfriend with you.
This is one thing that actually you're kind of missing a little bit of detail from the original to now anime. Is like in the way that alchemists always have things coded, Mustang was always writing down his dates as his coded type of notes. And so he's known as a womanizer. And there was a little small bit in the original anime of like when he becomes Fuhrer, all the women are going to have to wear really tiny mini skirts.
I think they joke about that a little bit in this one too.
Yeah.
So
but it's much more of the womanizer is telling him to break up with it, not just the guy who gets to keep his girlfriend close.
That's fair. Yeah.
This is the episode where Yoki, the guy you only seen by name, but not, he finds Scar in the Ishvalan camp after Scar had been kind of sort of brutalized by gluttony and swimming around in the sewers for a bit.
That's right.
And Al gets abducted by Greed and the Chimeras because they want to know about his body. It doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to sleep. It sounds great, except it's not. And episode 14, Those Who Lurk Underground, as Greed and Ed and Izumi fighting, and she's just a housewife. She keeps saying as she's beating the shit out of these people.
Right. She sneaks into like, you can't come in here. This is the war room. Who are you? I'm just a housewife. So,
and I'm gonna vomit blood on you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a housewife.
Yeah. And then the Fuhrer has gone south, and he has decided to be there as well. And Armstrong is with him. At some point, we had apparently missed Mace Hughes' funeral in all of this.
Yes.
And we've talked about it a little bit more, but one important detail is Armstrong had to stay exactly to what he was ordered to by the Fuhrer of not telling anybody anything. But Mustang is asking him a whole bunch of questions. And even though Armstrong doesn't say anything, Mustang is able to read between the lines and get, okay, so it was from someone above Mustang ordering him not to say anything, but also he's trying to say something. And so now Armstrong is with the Fuhrer now, because he knew how to keep his mouth shut, and also his motivation is probably just try to keep the Elric brothers safe.
Yeah, and I think because that was all happening in Central, was it that Pride hears everything that happens in the shadows or something like that? I'm just mixing that up with Dresden again.
No,
Like,
Pride absolutely can, yeah.
Hear the shadow.
Because there's the whole thing with Hawkeye later. So
right, so that's the deal with of course that's the homunculus side, the father side, the evil guy side will know whether or not Armstrong said anything, at least as long as he's near Pride in Central.
But we don't know that Armstrong knows that, right? So
Armstrong doesn't.
Yeah,
that's
Armstrong
true.
doesn't know
But
that
but you're saying that Armstrong is with Pride, Armstrong is with Wrath, Armstrong is with King Bradley because he didn't. The reason their side knows he didn't would be because maybe they would have if Pride had known. Which, by the way, is the only way that it makes sense that Lust caught on to Maze Hughes so quickly. Like why?
And
like the moment Maze Hughes saw a map, it was like, oh, they did it. What? Like he was saying anything to the audience. The only way that makes sense to me is that Pride.
And I still like pointing out the irony too, because it's like when you see like a regional map, right? You've got like Drachma and all the other countries are like actually country shaped, and then you've got what's
Amestris.
it? Amestris. Thank you. I almost said a different name entirely, but yeah. So Amestris is right there in the middle, very circular, and it's like, hello, this is a Clubat. Hi, how are you doing? You know, so it's kind of funny in hindsight, but
yeah. So in this episode, just to finish things up, there's a lot of fighting. The Chimeras are fighting the soldiers that the Fuhrer brought. There was already fighting with Greed and Ed and Izumi and all that. There's a moment of Armstrong and the guy that's part cow. They're just kind of muscling at each other, and they throw away their weapons just to muscle at each other some more. There was the woman Martell who was like part snake or something, and she was inside Al to keep him restrained, and the Fuhrer just ran up and speared her as Al was trying to get her away from the fighting, and she was trying to fight to get out of it. The Greed and Wrath are fighting each other, and the ultimate shield versus the ultimate spear, or the ultimate sword, I think is what they call it. No, he has the sword, but he has the eye that's the ultimate thing, and so it's his vision that is really important, and his ability to move. Even though he complains about being like 60-something years old and now everything hurts to move, he's moving still superhero speed.
Right. It's like a J.K. Simmons complaining in Invincible about slowing down. I looked it up. Apparently, people are saying that it was Envy who was disguised itself as the black guy, Fokker. It was in the room when Maze Hughes figured it out. So that's probably what it was. But
that does make sense. Yeah.
Right. So that'll be why they figured it out so quick.
So after all of the crazy things, so Martell dies inside Al. That kind of shocks him into remembering the whole truth, because they were very worried that like her blood got on his blood seal and crazy things. But now he remembers everything. And the Fuhrer tries to get Izumi Curtis to take the test for the state alchemy, and she says, oh no, I'm just a housewife. No thank you, right. Go away now. And then that's when Bradley is reporting to Lust with Greed captured, and they speak of sacrifices, and there's that image of father of like, why don't you play nice? Why do you defy me? Won't you please follow my orders? And Greed tells him to get fucked. And so then he gets swallowed up by father again.
What do you guys think about the assignment of the superpowers to the deadly sins? Because I'm not sure Greed and Ultimate Shield work together conceptually, or Ultimate Eye and Wrath work together conceptually. Gluttony kind of makes sense. Envy kind of makes sense. Lust is just a booby woman, but she has pointy fingers. That's her thing, is pointy fingers.
Ultimate Spear, I think it's called.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to go phallic? She's penetrating people, but I don't know.
Or it's just because long nails are feminine.
Sloth kind of makes sense, but it's I'm not sure about Pride, Wrath, or Greed really making sense, except I think because that's what the plot wanted them to have.
I mean, that's the biggest reason. Then the plot needed it to a certain
Yeah.
extent, and they worked around it within it. They had to be different from each other
Sure.
to be more interesting that way.
True. And I guess Pride was like the dwarf in the glass. It was that shape and form. So that makes sense. But maybe my problem is just with Ultimate Eye and Ultimate Shield just kind of being like, it's what's left over. They got the scraps. It's cool to have the eye covered up with an eye patch. Cool visual.
And the eye is also something that doesn't need to change. When he does the Ultimate Shield, it changes his skin and everything, and he looks weird. But
True.
Wrath, King Bradley, the Fuhrer that everyone knows, it needs to be able to just cover it up, and now he looks like a regular human.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if they have to be thematic. Like, I know the reason why they are Wrath, and he's taking those parts of himself or something and putting into them, or he's using wrathful like. All the people who are put into them were heavy on this trait. So I was reading the wiki. I'm not sure what was from the original anime and what's actual canon, but I don't think the powers necessarily had to translate to that aspect of who they are, of their personality.
Yeah, it's just confusing because it's semi-thematic, which is what I think Ben was saying, is that like
some are like
gluttony makes sense, envy makes sense, right?
But
some of the other ones,
Gluttony, the false gate, less does.
I think sloth is just like,
isn't he just strong?
It's a misnomer type of thing,
Yeah,
like
sloth has like this ultimate body to do all sorts of work and just can't do it very fast and refuses to. All he wants to do is do nothing.
There's that line in episode 14 that shows him from behind and what he's doing and what he's up to. Yeah, he wants to be just he wants to be lazy, just lounging around doing nothing.
Right.
So I remember
it's more his personality than his power, though. Right.
Well, yes, but all of the vices are their personality, right?
Yes.
That's what they're named for. Their powers are aside from
that makes sense too.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? The powers does not necessarily correlate to the personality or theme of who they are. That's like Wrath is wrathful. He's very angry, but I don't know how the Ultimate Eye has anything to do with being angry, or how Ultimate Shield has anything to do with being greedy.
Yeah,
I can see Sloth. I'm not sure about envy because he wants to be like other people.
Yeah. So you're a shape changer.
Change into other people.
Yeah. Right. Like that. That makes perfect sense to me. But
gluttony is what I meant. Gluttony fits, right? I don't know about sloth. Yeah. Why be big and strong if you want to be really lazy?
Because it's ironic.
Right. That's kind of what it turns into, right? Is that it's a bit of irony, and like it's kind of like a balance almost as well. Where it's like you're big and slow, but you are a force of nature, right? You are quasi unstoppable. And then the other bit that's a bit ironic is that one of his other powers is the super speed, just to catch you off guard, I guess, as much as anything. But I really liked him, even though he's relatively a minor character. Like, I loved his personality for it, with just like oh, everything's such a bother, and just whinging the entire time. It's just been like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, you shot me in the face with a tank, what a bother. Just shit like that was fucking hilarious to me. So and his ultimate fight was fantastic. So, but anyway, yeah, so their powers didn't always line up. I think that's the confusion, would be my take, is like none of them should have made sense, and we could have avoided this entire conversation. But
yeah, it's just okay. Enemy power, you can,
right,
an unstoppable force, immovable object.
Yeah,
and the unstoppable force.
I mean, maybe the Ultimate Eye is one shade removed from the Evil Eye, and that's why he's got that or something. But yeah, Greed's power being unstoppable healing or an impenetrable shield. I mean,
they all have healing, so that's not too crazy. It's the fact that he has the shield that, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So I have no idea. Like
Yeah,
no
it
guesses.
says, I just
Not-
googled it. The ultimate eye. He has a highly precise perception of details.
Okay.
He can read his opponents really well. That's all it is.
Sure.
Yes, but
Sure.
what's that got to do with being wrathful?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Doesn't.
Yeah. And we could argue that Greed's ultimate shield is made of carbon, and carbon is the base product of diamonds. And, you know, I have stretched so far now, but it's thematic. See, you know, and it would have made more sense if he was made of diamonds instead of, you know, carbon black. So
I think this is where, I think at this point in the show, this is where the theosophy and the hermeticism kind of elements, hermetic elements, are really starting to crystallize, and also where it's starting to completely digress from the original 2003 anime in terms of things that we recognize.
We're
Because
like
the very next
just at
episode,
that cusp.
this episode introduces Father, which is the weirdest, newest thing we've seen. If you're familiar with the 2003 anime, there's a lot of changes, but and it's weird. Why is King Bradley wrath? That doesn't make sense. He's supposed to be pride. You see the 2003, but then there's this father character. Okay, and he drinks envy. Ooh, that's really weird. What's going on here? And then the very next episode, we get two or three or four or five brand new characters that we haven't seen from the East.
Yeah, we're at that point where they are diverging, because I remember, like, basically Ling and Mei did not exist in the original anime, and when I was reading the manga, it's like, okay, these are new and we're going in weird directions now, and then I ended to stop reading it for whatever reason. But
and the Jingi's Alka history gets mentioned and brought up, and is a focal point.
We're at this turning point.
These characters, right?
Yeah. One thing I want to say too with Father getting introduced is, like, this was one of the biggest, like, missteps I had in trying to predict where the story was going. Because it's like, it's very clear by the time you get to like the second or third homunculus that it's like, oh, we've got like lust and envy. Okay, well, where's greed? Where's wrath? Where's, you know, whatever, right? And so it's like, okay, so we're doing the 7 deadly sins, great. But they hadn't introduced pride yet. And then they start calling this guy Father, and pride is the father of all of the other sins. And so that's kind of where I went into it.
The root of all sin.
Where's
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like,
False
oh, okay, well,
disregard.
that's kind of clever. And then, you know, he'll be revealed as a homunculus, which
little did you know, Pride was revealed that episode, just not as Pride.
Right.
Sealand Bradley shows up that very first episode.
Nice.
After the father reveal. So it's kind of that playing on your expectations bit, which is nice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which, you know, I don't hate, but it was like one of the few things where it was like telegraphed and I still got the wrong answer. So, you know, but
cool.
Yeah.
This is some wild stuff. It's been a wild ride. This is the longest stretch of episodes we'll do in these retrospectives. Everything else I think is like 11 episodes, right? 11, 12 episodes, something like that.
I don't know. It's on the Notion doc.
It flew by pretty fast. Like I watched it all in like a day.
Sure.
Over
Yeah,
2
I mean,
sessions.
I think the last section is also pretty long. 14.
Yeah.
The last section's going to be dense.
Episodes, so yeah. I mean, that's kind of my beef with it overall, right? Like, honestly, part of me being surprised about how much ground is covered in the first 14 episodes is because they really are episodic. They really are building a lot of stuff. Whereas like the last 20 episodes are like just action, you know, like there's still some reveal. There's still some questions that are answered and whatever, but like, I don't feel like as much ground is covered. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast, because those 20 episodes take place in like a day, you know? And so that's where it's like, ultimately the pacing is, you know, a crazy hockey stick of, you know, little bit of growth and then chow, and just takes off on you.
I think that last section being the climax is no longer are these threads being starting to woven together. It's all tightly together, and I just have to conclude it all. So the act, I think maybe if I was having issues with first act problems, you're pointing out fifth act problems where it's so focused. It's not doing the Lord of the Rings thing where there are at least 2 solid plot threads, 3 solid plot threads that you carry through all the way to the end. It is just one big story that it's telling, and everyone's cooperating over the entire nation.
Well, and I mean,
Original.
it gets to the point, like spoilers for a discussion we'll have in like 4 or 5 shows probably, but like it kind of even overshadows, who's presumably the main characters in the sense of the Elric brothers, right? Like, because then we start having to give equal time to like the Chimera brothers, and we got to give equal time to Mustang's crew of misfits and, stuff like that. So it's like, it just, yeah, it's a completely different pacing, if nothing else,
Right.
compared to what we have had. So
That's true.
But-
Did you feel like it relied a lot on background knowledge of the 2003 anime, looking back on this first intro section again? Since you hadn't watched the 2003, Justin, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most jarring point for that, and where I brought it up a couple of times, is Yoki's backstory. Just because they take an entire episode or like half of an episode to talk about his backstory, that you would have otherwise, gotten if you had gone through the anime or the first anime, right, or the manga. So other than that, like, I mean, I see that there are some differences and stuff, but like the director said, like, you really the Venn diagram is the first 12-ish episodes plus or minus, at least on the full metal Alchemist Brotherhood side, and then after you get to that point in the story, it starts to diverge more or less wildly, right? So I don't know if watching the first anime would help beyond, I don't know how many episodes.
I was trying to approach it from the issue of looking back on this. Is this show the worse for condensing so much of the first 14 episodes, or was it still comprehensible to you? I guess that's my question.
I feel like it was fairly comprehensible, right? There's a lot of clues to keep track of potentially, but I didn't have a problem with the pacing in the first 14 episodes. I feel like they really did do a pretty good A-B story, but as we are discussing it again and as we're going through it, there are some very much like C, D, and E, because you got to realize that the military guys are talking to each other in code, and the A plot is probably the Elric brothers, and the B plot is whatever the homunculi are doing, but then you've got to worry about what Hughes and Mustang are doing, and so that becomes like a third axis, and okay, what is Scar doing this whole time, and things like that. So it doesn't feel like a lot to keep track of, but some of those threads I didn't remember. I don't remember as like which part of what episode they're in. Other than
the point, Mustang is going to become a completely different type of character. As in these first 14 episodes, he's an important side character. He is going to become an important main character.
Yeah. Well, and he's played off as a joke, right?
Yes.
In the same way that Hughes is, which is why I didn't even necessarily put together the fact that they might have been talking to each other in code already, because that's not really fully revealed until Mustang starts doing it more or less overtly for the audience, right? So that's a detail that I'm getting appreciation of, in hindsight. For sure. It's like Mustang didn't just invent this. They were doing that already. And it's like, oh shit, that might be worth a rewatch. I watched it like a month ago, so I didn't go rewatch it for this, but it's definitely interesting. So I don't know if that answers your question, but at least I rambled a bunch.
It looks like you lost Ben in the middle of the ramble.
He died. Yep. So
visually, this he's back. He moved. Ben?
No, I'm here.
Okay. Did you hear what
maybe he just had a stroke?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I zoned out. I can do this for an hour, but hour 40 pushes it for me.
Let's close it out then.
Sorry,
Anyone
guys.
got any last remarks?
I'll go check the replay and then react.
So we'll be doing episodes 15 to 29 or
26.
something in the next,
26.
I don't know, 26, 15 to 26 in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Cool. So if you like to watch us talk about anime on while we're recording, or Dresden Files on the Dresden Files podcast, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/brokenjars. Well, then if you give us some money, you'll get access to Discord, and you can come and ask us questions or participate in gift wars, whatever you feel like. It's very non-committal. You don't. We have people who also support us on Patreon and don't join the Discord. Personally, I think you should join the Discord because it can be fun, but you don't have to. Or you can catch us live on YouTube every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. 1 p.m. Eastern. Yes, 1 p.m. I'm pretty sure that's right. 1 p.m. Eastern. Leave us a comment, like the video. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.